Hi everyone, this is Carla Smith of North America Corporate Communications, and we are coming live from Westborough, Massachusetts, where Tom Kinisky is hosting his first town hall as President and CEO of Saint-Gobain Corporation. In just a moment, we're going to head inside. Tom Kinisky and Carmen Farino are going to be doing an employee interview session where they're going to be talking to employees at various stages in their career about how they've been able to reinvent themselves through their tenure at Saint-Gobain. Just one moment, we'll head inside. Okay, so we are live at the Westborough Town Hall. See the panel discussion taking place. Say hello, everyone.
I'm the Director of Export Control Compliance and Government Programs for North America.
And so I'm the head of communications, and I work on the foundation too. So now you can start to see the evolution. I want to go back and think about that. Everybody winds up in a different place, and it's the story and the way that this company can help you shift gears when we talk about invent yourself, reshape the world. So I want to go to Bob. Bob, when we talked earlier, there was something that you had said that I thought was just so fascinating is everybody reads the newspaper, but you read it differently than other people. So talk to me a little bit about, in this role, when you read the newspaper, what are you looking for that other people may not as part of their job?
Well, part of my job is to make sure that that the North American companies are in compliance with export control. Mm-hmm. So things that happen in the world, public things that happen with some of our trading partners mm-hmm. and some of our adversaries can affect how we trade. So it's important to know what changes might happen, and then I go in the next day and see how the regulations might change. But more interestingly, a lot of times the news media gets the reports wrong, or they're misleading, like fake news.
Yeah.
And I have to come in and make sure that the businesses understand that what they might have read in the newspaper may not be true, and these are the details about how they're going to be exporting their product.
So I go back to the Bob that started here in Saint-Gobain. If you could talk to that person, would he have any concept that you would be in this type of job?
No idea.
No idea.
I thought I'd be making toilet bowls or something.
There you go. And that's kind of the point here. Bree, as after our interview, I was driving home and thinking, accounting, criminal justice, you were really well suited to investigate the mob. And yet you came to Saint-Gobain and you found a place where you could really thrive. So give us a sense about, you're a year and a half into it. Bob is, several decades into his career. Comparing the two of you, what brought you to this version of Saint-Gobain at this time? What drew you here?
Well, the opportunities mostly, because I had heard that Saint-Gobain was a good company to work for. Mm-hmm. And at the time that I came here, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I started doing administrative work, and then I started to get interested in human resources by talking to other HR in my business, and then I decided to go back to school before I even started my career in HR, and that was the smartest thing I could have done, and so here I am.
So I mean so that idea of impacting people and seeing how to apply that and being a part of that process, that really struck you as unique.
Yes.
For Saint-Gobain?
Yep. My first idea of human resources was, I didn't really actually know 100% about the field, I'll be honest about that. And as I started to learn throughout school, I became more interested in that career choice, and then an opportunity became available at Refractories, and so that's how I became the HR journalist there.
Because I think your story parallels a lot of what Steve is talking about. Steve, most of your career has been spent outside of Saint-Gobain, right?
Absolutely. I'm brand new with the group and just a little over a year, and have built my career step by step in a number of different industries, and it's different than the typical path that I see around me, especially in roofing.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that was interesting, so I went to go visit Steve up in Norwood. I don't know, how many people have been to Norwood? It's a great place, right? I mean, I was there when Steve's team was dealing with a rapid shutdown, and they had cameras set up all over the plant, and they were able to immediately, it was almost like we set it up. It looked so brilliant that when something broke, they immediately knew where it was and how to fix it. But there's something different about that site that I thought was fascinating. You showed it to me. How old's that site? What did it start out doing?
The site's been there since 1904. It's the oldest roofing plant in North America, and a couple of neat things is the company that CertainTeed acquired in 1998, the Bird Corporation, made our first currency for the United States of America. 9 printing companies, printing presses at the time, and it was unique. It was the first company that also extruded vinyl for vinyl siding. So it started right there in Norwood, Massachusetts. It's a neat piece.
So we're going to tell Tom Smith that his is the only company here that actually started making money.
And prints money today?
It prints money? Is that because he's going to? He's going to use that, right? The transformation of Bird and where we end up now with a state-of-the-art plant that it started making paper money it's kind of what we do, right? A 350-year-old company that reinvents itself every 20 to 30 years to have that impact on well-being, right? To move humanity forward. And Anne, you've got a career that has moved around inside this innovation area, but you also spent time not just in North America. You were over in Paris. How do people over there view North America in terms of innovation?
Well, I think they see North America as being an innovative place, and they see a lot of startups starting there. And I think, Tom, you were talking about that within the company, we want to be able to see, investors want to be able to see that Saint-Gobain has a certain presence in North America because they see it as a growth area.
And I think, the credibility that Anne brings is that she understands the process of innovation, and she understands, Tom's point about this customer-focused innovation. That's a big point in the U.S. and in Northborough, isn't it? I mean, you have a very different profile from the rest of the sites in North America, right?
As an R&D center?
As an R&D center, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And the diversity that's in there is very different, right? You're covering just about every business in North America under that roof, right?
We are. So we cover HPM, with the exception of crystals, and we also cover, we're increasingly covering CertainTeed, and we have quite an active program around building science and building materials too.
How many nationalities are there today in Northborough? Do you know any?
I do. 30. We have 30 different nationalities that work there. So when you talked about having someone who's American and a Thai woman, et cetera, well, we don't have a Thai woman, but we could assemble teams that have that kind of diversity.
And so I want to go back to the idea of diversity as a competitive advantage, because when we look at the aspirational side of things, we want to be agile, we want to be innovative, and a lot of that has to do with differing points of view. So I want to go back to something that Tom said. Tom, when you started in this job, did you have a sense of the breadth of what we do across the entire portfolio?
No.
No. It was something that you found over time.
In fact, it's probably been, Carmen and I have talked about this in my first 5 months because, when you work inside, I spent my entire career inside of HPM, different parts of HPM, but inside of HPM. And so I always had this view of construction products through the eyes of HPM. And now I'm looking at it a totally different set of eyes. Mm-hmm. And that learning is really exciting. So here I am very late in my career and I'm learning about a whole aspect of the group that I've never really touched. And get a chance to see that is so exciting because there's a lot of, I used to think it had to be boring, it had to be, but it actually isn't. And there's a lot of aspects that I'm really excited about inside of construction products.
So, and that's where I throw it out to the rest of the group. This is a town hall. What we're supposed to do here is help you make connections and see things differently. You've just had a profile of the 5 people that are up here. Different points of view than you thought? How many people have learned something new that they didn't know? Right? That's the point. The breadth and depth of what we have here unlocks all kinds of potential. And that's that idea of invent yourself, reshape the world, a sense of purpose. Tom talked about, it's not about making a living, it's about making a life. And you're different people at different stages of your lives. Bob, I go back to you as you went through this evolution. If you look at Bob's resume, you can look at it on LinkedIn. It's really interesting. You can see how Bob found something interesting and then jumped to this thing and then to that thing. So talk about, did you have a clear sense as you were doing this that you were really kind of architecting a career?
I'm not sure it really worked that way. Just the opportunities arose, and Saint-Gobain there were so many different interesting businesses that I was able to work with. And for example, we started off when I first came to Northborough in advanced structural ceramics that were really big at the time in energy conservation, and they were thinking about ceramics for gas turbine engines and for automotive. And we became very popular with the government because the government saw that we were a leader in the world. So we started getting more government contracts, but with government contracts comes responsibility. So I kind of evolved into the area of making sure we could write good proposals. We could get funding from the government, but we could also stay out of trouble. So, and that's how we got into the compliance area. And then from there, it went to export control, and it just evolved from there.
It just evolved from there is a phrase I think I hear from a lot of people. It just evolved from there. That's the culture. It's a culture that allows you to evolve from there into the next thing. And I think that's what Bree was saying, right? You saw this opportunity, and then you felt, well, now I can invest. Because there's opportunity here, not just for one move, but maybe 2, 3, 4 down the road. So how's that different? You have other friends who are in different places. Are people surprised at the breadth of the company and what they do?
Well, first of all, a lot of people that I talk to don't necessarily know what Saint-Gobain is.
Thanks, Bree. That's my job. But okay.
But I enjoy talking about the company and what Tom said about working for a company where you make things and you're proud of that. I'm actually proud to tell people about where I work and some of the things we make. And even because I'm early in my career, I'm still learning about the company. Just from Tom's presentation, I've learned about what our products go into. So I think that's really important to share with other people and let them know about the company that way.
How does that make you feel when you hear this? How does it make everybody in the audience feel that you have this company that is moving humanity forward? Is that something that you wind up, and I see some people nodding their heads, is that, because it is kind of a Gazinta company, right? It goes into this, it goes into that, it goes into this. That's the interesting part of it, is that there's a story to tell. And I think that's the point that we're getting at here, is how do we draw in the next generation of talent? I mean, Steve, you're dealing with that all the time, right? We've got to bring in people not just who are good at what they do, but they've got to fit these attitudes. So, what draws them here? Do they have to see themselves today, or are they trying to see themselves 2, 3, 10 years down the road?
Well, I'm trying to paint a picture as a leader of where folks that are coming in that are new, whether they're seasoned or new, brand new, just out of school, that they've got a path, to grow, and they've got an opportunity to advance beyond the department that they're hired in, but across a company that has 170,000 employees, 68 countries. It's an amazing breadth that when you hire someone in a single plant, they don't understand when they first walk in the door.
Yeah, and so Ann, you've got people who are working on projects that could mean colonizing, off planet. There are people who are working on things that could be changing the way that we capture energy or impact climate change. How do you look at that and then explain to some of the smartest people in the world that we're recruiting that this is a place where they can reach their full potential? I mean, how does that work? Is it a short conversation? Do they have to come back and meet multiple people? How does it change the dialogue?
Well, I think there's two parts there. I think that people, when they come to see us, oftentimes haven't heard that much about Saint-Gobain. But if they've looked on the internet, which good candidates oftentimes have, they come and say, I'm really interested in the profile of what I see. They like the commitment that they see. They like the company's been around for a long time. And yet, for example, I interviewed someone yesterday, Anand, and oftentimes we're giving them jobs where they're not going to be working on, they don't see the connection to colonizing Mars. We're trying to tell them that abrasives is a really exciting and challenging place that's going to give them the career growth and the technical challenges that they want in their career. And I think for us, it's being able to marry those two things. One is a vision of where we want to go and how we can contribute. And yet some of the products that we have, as I often say, are mature products. And yet I think we all speak to them about mature products still have extremely challenging technical problems associated with them, and things to learn, and ways that they can grow their career and be technically challenged with those.
So there's a sense of satisfaction in that grind, in the my abrasive
I'm
pun.
not sure. Oh, that right. Okay, that's a joke. It's like,
He also wanted to be a comedian.
There you go. I couldn't make it. That was a career shift. I mean, and when we talk about that idea of the commoditized product and trying to reinvent it, that's hard. In some cases, having some great innovation that lands in your lap is easy in some ways, right? That kind of works itself out. But the real hard part is to reinvent a business. I look at Brad and we talked about something simple like, okay, you're going to grind a piece of metal. But if you do that knowing what the metal's like and you know how to do it the right way, and let's say the application is to just melt water at just the right rate so it creates some slipstream so you can actually move a sled, we win an Olympic medal, right? And that's when, so Brad, I want to run that weird box over here over to Brad. I want to, since somebody, not hit him in the head with it, but get it close to him. Brad, when the person who was in the luge won their medal, who did they come over and thank first?
I had an incessant number of cell phone calls from an unknown number when I was in a meeting, and I just kept hitting send it to voicemail, and I figured after about the fifth one it was important. And it was probably 11 o'clock at night in Russia, and it was Aaron Hamlin calling, thanking us for helping her win the medal.
Now think about that. You know, you wonder what your value is, but here is a woman who's dedicated her life to shaving hundredths of a second off of her time. And with all that skill and all that energy, she picks up the phone and she calls Brad. Because his team, in knowing the science that they know, and putting their best people on it, actually were, pun intended, material to her success. That's what we're talking about. And sometimes it's not an Olympic person. You know, it was laughing, it's not rocket science until sometimes it's rocket science. And it's not curing cancer until sometimes it's curing cancer. So even in reinventing those, when you reinvent a business and you allow it to transform and continue to grow and thrive, those profits get thrown into the next generation. And so I think that's what we're trying to get at here, is that spending time, as Tom said, setting the context for growth. Sometimes it's personal growth. Sometimes it's business growth. Sometimes it's enterprise growth. That's the part that we're trying to convince, because depending on the numbers you want to look at, if 40% to 50% of our top leaders are retiring in the next 5 to 7 years and 50% of the replacements are retiring, then there's a huge opportunity for people to mid to senior career. But if we're growing and we need people to be engineers in Kansas or Missouri, then we need people who are early in their careers. And we might be in an industry that hasn't even been invented yet, solving problems that haven't been thought of yet, but that's what we do. So I want to go back, to Bob Light, because, Bob, you have a job that now enables so many different businesses. What's the common thing that you notice about people in Saint-Gobain? Is it they're kind? Is it they're collaborative? Is it they're smart? What kind of is the single unifying thing that you see over and over again?
Well, there's a great talent, they're very smart, but they're also collaborative. And they basically just want to do a good job. They want to get the right people together to do the right job. In export control, it becomes challenging because there are some limits in collaboration, and we have to deal with different countries, and it's always been a challenge. But I do find that the dedication is there. And one of the, I've worked in a lot of different areas. I worked with a lot of different businesses, and I'm very impressed with the talent that's out there.
So that's what I turn back to everybody else. You've got all of these experts up here. What do you see that's common? If you had to tell somebody walking off the street, what's unique about Saint-Gobain? What's unique about your business? Anybody have anything that they think is unique that maybe we haven't heard before? Any questions? No? Because the one that gets me over and over is that we're involved in all these amazing things, and we talk about being innovative, and we're a part of this giant revolution, but we can't see it. And I think it's because it's this evolution revolution, all these little tiny turns that every single person is doing day in and day out. Those cameras on the line that do one thing, or somebody at a lab bench who says, you know what, I've got this idea, but I don't know what to do with it. I'm going to talk to the people at Nova. And then the people at Nova get involved. And you're going to see a little bit with our partnerships. But all those little turns add up. And what we've seen that's interesting, and Tom, you'll talk about it because you just got back from Paris in terms of long-range planning, is when you add those things up, it's we're really talking about planning for not just years, we're talking about decades. And we're in a very interesting point in time, right? This inflection point. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think what Carmen's referring to is, I think the group, and certainly Pierre-Andre, and I've known him a long time, he's been trying to make us more market focused over the last 10 years or so. So a lot of what he's been trying to do is get us more customer focused, market centric. And I think we're at that stage now where, now we have that. What are we going to do with that? How do we change inside to take advantage of that? And so when I talk about an inflection point, it's this convolution of the technology we have, the investments we've made there, together with with what I think is, I don't want to call it a new mission. I think it's a refined mission to fit exactly who we need to be, and I think it's very compelling, and so that's happening now, together here in North America, with our need for talent, and the opportunity we have collectively to really change all of the talent across North America. We're going to hiring that many people into one region is it's what I said before. It's an opportunity that you're really only going to get a few times in your career. So it's a little like celebrating the 350th. We were lucky that we were here to do that. You're not going to get a lot of opportunities to do what we have in front of us, to hire that many people. We have to take it seriously. We have to do it well, but it's going to define who we are for the next 25 to 30 years. And so it's a fantastic inflection point, or convolution of things happening that are really unique.
So we haven't talked specifically about that, but I want to pause here because I don't know if everybody's thought about this. Has anybody seen the history book, the 350 history book? There's a piece in there with a timeline. And when we started to look at this idea of what was going on today, we went back and looked at the timeline. And about every 30 or 40 years, like Tom said, there are these inflection points where the world turns. So we know for a fact, right, there was somebody in Saint-Gobain who was like, that Napoleon, he's not going to amount to much, right? There's somebody inside the company who saw Napoleon coming and we adapted, or there was a world war, or there was a revolution. That's where we are at this inflection point. So when we talk about the attitudes, and I've left them up there for a reason, this is not just an aspirational culture. Valerie talked about this. This is who we are. We need to attract people like us, people who want to go through this process. Not everybody wants to do that. Not everybody wants to step off into the deep end. So, I go back, Bree, when you think about what the next 10 or 15 years is like, it's a lot of change. How do you kind of focus on that? Is it that you're a lifelong learner, or that's something that interests you, that variety and the ability to adapt?
Yeah, I think in any business now, you need to be able to change, be open to change, and be able to get others to change with you. So I think if you can find people that have that same mindset about change, then that will be helpful to bring those people on, and then you can be a lifelong learner and grow from there.
I love what Bree just said about learning, because next week is the learning week, and so it's a great setup for next week, because I told a story to tell a story. I apologize if you've already heard it, but not long ago I was asked to give a presentation to the EOL group about plastics. This was a couple of years ago, and the EOL group, I think you know who they are. They're brand new hires, and very enthusiastic. And I go in, I give my presentation. At the end of the presentation, a very enthusiastic young guy in front immediately raises his hand and starts with Mr. Kinisky and your long and illustrious career, or something like that. and then he started asking this question, and like after he even started, I almost didn't listen to his question, because I was sitting there like, first of all, he called me Mr. Kinisky, which nobody does, which was like startling. No, that's my father, that's not me. And then when he said long career, I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, it's been long, because I don't feel like it is. I feel like, every day I come into work to learn something. So I'm sitting there like, well, when did I become like the old guy? I'm here to learn from you, not the other way around. That's the way I think about it. And you're exactly right, Bree. I mean, having that sense of curiosity and learning, I think, is really important, and we need to embed that. And next week we'll get a chance to talk about that because I think it's really important.
So when you try to put attitudes together, you sometimes lump a lot of pieces. But that idea of building an open and engaging culture, I think that's what we're talking about here. It's an interesting thing to be an engaging culture and really want to have those different experiences. And I think that's the part about Saint-Gobain that really threw me, is when you combine that with acting as an entrepreneur. So I want to talk about acting as an entrepreneur because it's interesting. It's not that we want everybody to just do anything they think is a good idea like that, but it's having a good idea and having a company that gets behind you. I always say that what's interesting and different from Saint-Gobain, and I've only been here a little over 5 years, is that when you get support for an idea, you run, you go. That can be changing the operations at a plant. It could be having a different way of attracting talent. It can be changing a relationship with how we deal with a country, right? I mean, these are big opportunities. How do you explain that? I mean, I look at you, Steve, and I think, okay, you've been here for how long? A year and a half, a little bit over that? Yeah. What's it feel like compared to other places in terms of that sense of autonomy and entrepreneurial spirit?
Well, I think it's very motivating. Let's put it that way. It's very encouraging. One of the neat things about having the opportunity to hire a number of engineers this past year, a couple of them on replacement, but then a few for growth, is that I've got that stewardship. My team, my leadership team has the stewardship of bringing that young talent up, and so it's very encouraging to both have that opportunity, but to be part of that next generation, that next culture that's we're developing into.
So I see a couple of other people nodding their heads, and I mean you're dealing with that too, right? I mean you see that next generation and the changeover and the enthusiasm. What's that like?
Well, I think it's actually really important. So within the R&D Center, we've actually consciously tried to hire more bachelor's level people than we have in the past. Of course, we're still hiring PhDs right out of their career. And yet I think if I speak to our bachelor's people who join, I think that they actually bring a different culture with them. And it brings a lot of new people and young people, and maybe that's politically incorrect, but they're young, and with enthusiasm and the desire to change things and to do things, and I think it's a great addition to the culture of the R&D Center.
So let's go back to that because we're going to wrap up here, but I want to think about that. All right, who's been in their job for more than 5 years in their current role right now? Up here, in the room. Okay, that's me too. Who's been in their job?
How many? That was very few.
All right, raise your hand. Who's been in their job more than 5 years? All right.
Current job.
Current job. There you go. Current job. Nope. So now between 2 to 5 years. Raise your hand. 2 to 5 years. All right. People up here. All right. Less than 2 years. Let's say 1 to 2 years. All right. Less than 6 months. Right. All right. So he's less than 6 months. Somebody else less than 6 months. All right. You got a lot in common with Tom Kinisky, don't you? The Rose Trill's trying to figure out what you got yourself into, right? So you're inventing yourself right now. Those of us who are 2 to 3 years in, we're reinventing, right? We're starting to figure out what that becomes. 5 years into the job, right? I mean, that's the difference, is that different phases. You've got the guy who's running the region, who's new to his job. You've got somebody who is at a plant, new to her job. That's different. You don't see that everywhere. That's what we're talking about. At different phases of your career, you're either inventing or reinventing. Now, the thing that I want to leave you with is that campaign's not just for an executive team. You have to tell this story too. We need to tell your stories. So that's the commitment that we need, is we want to hear your stories. You may think it's just you, but it's not just you. There's somebody else out there who's wondering if they should go to a company like this. And when they see you, you're the person that inspires them. You might be the old person, or the experienced person, or the mid-career person, or the person who's 3 to 5 years out of college. But for that person who's wondering if they should come here, you're it. You're the point of connection. So that's kind of what I want to leave you with before we go to the next section, because the next one is about how do we engage in these partnerships with people outside Saint-Gobain to have the same impact. So I want to thank everybody up here. This was a great conversation. Thanks for the time, because I know it's tough to take time out of your busy lives to do this. Thank you. All right. So now we're going to move in a little. This is kind of like for those of us who've been around for a while. Tom, you can sit there and move in. It's, you know, when you did well on Johnny Carr, he would allow you to come.
So
to
there you have it. Thanks for
sofa.
joining us.
You know, you didn't have to just do your stand up and walk off. So we're going to tighten it.